by my voice, or I should leave my voice as it is. But the tech in this place suggests I speak to the mic. Colleagues, I think let's settle down to start. I know some of you has been told you can sit up front here because I might just point to you to take the questions. No, it's okay. If there's a seat open up front here, please do utilize it. So that those who come late, instead of them trying to trickle through to the front because that's where the seat is, they can immediately sit wherever the seat is open. Professor Berman, at least you are my colleague, I can pull you here so that you don't have to sit on the, you don't have to stand on the exit. Professor Musandiwa, that tie makes a contrast, so please do come in because we can see you. And there is a seat in front here. You don't have to hide. He's the head of department for MBA, those who wants to study MBA. He does really look corporate. I said he must take his best suit for today, and I see he has got the memo. Prof Mokoena, you did find your seat. He's the director of the school. He heard that Mphahlele Hotla was going to be here. I thought he would compete him in terms of being colorfulness. So don't be surprised that he is all Kaiser Chiefs. They never win anything, but we support them all nonetheless. Colleagues, not going to waste time. You can see the two exit doors, and I'm going to ask the colleagues that are crowded at the door to either come inside or take the different stations that you need to take into. So either come sit down or clear that exit pathway. I was about to start my own program, but I'm told there is a proper program here. There is something called 50. When you turn 40, they say life begins at 40. When you turn 50, they say you start living. So at least those who have now turned 50, or at least those who have turned 50 this year, I didn't want to make an announcement about the gadgets. I thought that we are now used to these things that they do ring out of 10. When you don't expect them to ring, they ring. When you're expecting a call, it never comes. So those who turning 50, and I would like Prof Mphahlele when he comes here to comment on this. The year Prof Mphahlele, it was 1987. It's not 50 years yet. The year it was 1987. I was a student at the University of the North at the time. I used to stay at Stoffbeck because I was a theological student. And I had joined a groupings of people that I'm not going to mention their names lest they are implicated in what I'm about to say. And one of the things that was very well was some ground that was left open. And then we had a slogan, no normal sports in an abnormal society. And I got to be tasked with few other people to attend to a particular elite sport that was happening next to campus. So there was a golf course, used to be looked on very well, this golf course. And there was a disproportionate number of white lecturers that used to play there every time. I didn't have a license at the time, so I learned how to drive. They said, no, on this day, we're going to teach you how to drive in that golf course. That's how we're going to destroy it. That's how these guys are not going to continue to play this normal sport. So I'm here, Prof. Mphahlele, to confess that my sins of 1987 of destroying that course caught up with me last Sunday. So from 1987, I never visited that course ever. But last Sunday, I was invited to a function there, and they said, please do come and play. And they did not know this story. To come and play, and I went and played, and it was in a serious state that needs a bit of attention. But Victor told me that he is busy attending to it. But why do I mention this? It's because it's one of the most hidden secrets, Prof. Mphahlele, if you do not know. But me, as a golf player, I do know. It's one of the most hidden secrets, in that it's the only course in Limpopo that has a hole that is being played on top of a mountain. The only one. And when I said, because this lecturing business is really an extension to my real life, which is entrepreneurship. When I said, what I could see was not the disrepair that is on that golf course, but what I could see was a business that could be done. I then asked Victor, but why is this thing in your care? Why is this not in the care of the business school? Because I would want the business school to be challenged, and its students to be challenged to use it as a test case for how well we are teaching students. So that students could have a business, they could develop a business plan on how to revitalize that golf course. Obviously, I immediately thought that I'm going to be told about, no, we're not going to have staff. I said, no, we'll just transfer the ones that are there and make sure that the people that are responsible for MBA manages them too. And then that third stream income that sits on my performance agreement will have immediately been sorted, because I'm sure we can make a lot of money. With those words, Prof. Mphahlele, I will ask you to come and say a few words.
Thanks, Lengani. It's always good for people to sort of later in life confess. It does assist, and we get to know you better. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. This is not my day. It's their day, your day. Up front, let me say, if I happen not to mention you by name, it has got no bearing on your level of importance. You all important. You all welcome to the University of Limpopo. I know there are people who always doubt that this is part of the University of Limpopo. It is part of the University of Limpopo. We do accommodate. Politicians are already getting a key ingredient of our very decisions and actions. We take interest in our learners' grades to determine who to admit and where to admit them. We concern ourselves with the income levels of their families. Not just for the fun of it to say how many millionaires kids we educating at the university, but to see who of them need financial assistance to see them through. Accommodation, lecture halls, the size of our teaching and learning staff, laboratory equipment and consumables are all based on numbers and statistics. As a province, Limpopo is a high growth hub of not only South Africa, but the Southern African Development Community. There are numbers in the economic potential of the region, in the high volumes of tourists' arrivals and the positive spin-offs that so you can see that there's development from these, and all this is determined by numbers. From these numbers, we are able to gain
it is quite true. But that's not the point I was making. The point I was making is that, and I thought he will reveal it himself, is that Prof. Mokhalong arrived at this university, not in Mokoena, but at this university 50 years ago. He has been with the university for 50 years. 50 years. Thank you for this, for the golf course, Prof. Mokhalong. We'll make money out of it. You didn't comment about that. Thank you. We'll deal with the administrative people, but we'll take it as a business school and make it ours. The Dean of the Faculty, Executive Dean of the Faculty of Law and Management, do you want to come and tell us what, how this works? Okay, he doesn't play golf, but anyway, I'll take you for lessons. Prof. Mphahlele, the stage is yours.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor, for the warm words of welcome, and basically, just to say that I don't play golf. He does not play wrestling. So if he wants to challenge me for wrestling, I'm game, and then I'll do that. I'm telling you, I'll break his legs. Having said that, thank you again, the Vice Chancellor and Principal Professor Mokhalong. And my purpose here, or my job here, was to say what is the purpose of this particular gathering, the second gathering of the University of Limpopo under the flagship, the Turfloop Graduate School of Leadership. Prof, you emphasized numbers. And I can tell you, I felt really intimidated that how is it that lying before me are individuals that know more about numbers and about science. And as a lawyer, I'm expected to introduce or to outline the purpose. And you said something about Pythagoras. And I remember in my then, the grades, my sub-A, when I was doing Dipalo, I had to do, or memorize the theorem of Pythagoras. So I have to say it, so that now at least our SG knows that, I'm at the right place. They are well informed about the numbers and the opportunities that the numbers are going to give us in terms of development and growth. The squares on the hypotenuse side of a triangle equals the number of squares in the other two adjacent sides. So what I can tell you is because we are at TGSL. This is our business, to educate. With that said, I think Professor Mokhalong has really summarized. I'm not going to waste time a lot on the issue of what is the purpose of this. Prof, you have summarized the purpose of this particular gathering. As in soccer, we have also had our masters team, being fielded outside there, telling the general public on Capricorn FM, SABC, what is the purpose of this particular event. So our masters, they did really a lot of work. But then as part of the mission of the University of Limpopo, ours is to play a significant role as a university in contributing to South Africa's national development plan and influencing both the national and the global developments and imperatives. That is the University of Limpopo. In the different areas, we are talking about public health, we are talking about science and agriculture, we are talking about humanities, where you find education. We are also talking about now this faculty, that is management and law. The list is exhaustive or non-exhaustive in terms of what we do. But allow me to mention the following, that now all of us here, you are part of history for the second time of nurturing, forging close ties with communities as the Turfloop Graduate School of Leadership as we serve and address the different public interest issues today through numbers, from the socio-economic and political perspective. That is our business. Basically, we are fostering inclusive development. The second one is also as TGSL and also as the University of Limpopo, we are here serving as a catalyst for regional development. And I think we need to emphasize that. Catalyst for regional development. We are better placed as the University of Limpopo to serve the regions. Wherever we go, we exit into another country or another region. So that's basically what we are doing. And I know that if given more time to address this gathering, our Vice Chancellor, Prof. Mphahlele, would have said we need to emphasize the role the university and its units, such as Turfloop, Graduate School of Leadership, through partnership and joint initiatives with communities, leaders, and also the province, we are playing in promoting social justice and regional socio-economic development. So I'm not going to say more again, but through this leadership conversation, TGSL will bring ideas, perspectives, eminent persons to dissect and to inform us. It is for this reason that now today we have the Statistician-General. And then if you are very much aware, generally, when we talk, we speak SG. We are talking about a person who is responsible for overseeing and coordinating the national statistical system, ensuring the production, analysis, and dissemination of accurate, and we need to emphasize that, accurate and reliable statistical information about anything, as Prof. Mphahlele has just said, from health, education, even how many of us are doing less in contributing to the Republic. So you will agree with me that at this stage, where it is very hard to come by reliable information, it could not have been more appropriate that TGSL and the University of Limpopo, we thought, let's bring here in conversation with Professor H. Matebula, an individual who can, the only person who can say, this is the right and reliable information if you want to talk numbers. Towards the end, it is also worth noting that the reflection is going to be provided again by somebody who knows more about statistics, being the former chairperson of SA Statistics Council. But then it will be remiss of me, particularly as the executive dean of this particular faculty, not to mention the following, just two, if you allow me. We are here continuing to make history towards developing a strong and distinctive brand identity for the only graduate school of leadership in the province of Limpopo with the 3 programs that we have. We have the Master of Business Administration, we have the Master of Development in Planning and Management, and then we also have the Master of Public Administration. So you can see that for the province, we need to start closing that traffic N1 South, because then here is the place. You don't have to go far, because then that's exactly what you are doing as the purpose of this series. And that particular individual who's saying, I want to go and do MBA, tell the person, just next to Peter Mokaba Stadium, go there, go and sign up and run. If you find difficulties, I'm talking now to the leaders of the different divisions in the provincial leadership, that for me to sign that financial support for your studies, until that time that now you could not get into TGSL, we are not talking. First go there, because then this is the province where you need to, to give more. as our SG is doing. So allow me then to conclude by saying that now, please, we know the purpose here. We are building really critical conversations under the banner of TGSL in the University of Limpopo, the Great University of Limpopo. As you go out, there is really a gazebo. I don't know what you call it lately, a gazebo. There are forms, there is information. Come and join us. We'll take care of you. And then as all of us, we take care of the community of Limpopo. Thank you very much.
Can somebody tell Victor to come through? Prof. Sivan, you said the sum of what equals what? I know I'm from Mokoena, I'm from a village in Jandri, somewhere this side next to the Kruger National Park. There was one little thing that was missing. Victor, you're gonna come and do this. There is my sister in the midst of the people that needs to be introduced or must be acknowledged. Unless I'm acknowledging my own sister and people start saying, look at this guy now. And Prof. Mphahlele doesn't know that the person he was talking about is actually my blood sister. He doesn't know this. So the correct thing was, it's equals to the sum, not equal. Equal to the sum. No, it's working.
Okay.
Is it? This one is working. So it's equals to the sum. That part, Prof. Sivanda forgot to mention. But because it's of my age, I know he did A1 and AB, A2. So A1 was the one that came in the morning, A2 is the one that came in the afternoon. Victor, just to avoid ambiguity around the fact that I have a sister in between and friends that are in here, that you are the one acknowledging them. I wasn't going to let you leave without doing your work.
All right. Thank you very much, Prof. Matebula. I was trying to save time, but in the midst of professors, you can't defy an instruction. Prof. Mphahlele, Vice Chancellor and Principal, we acknowledge you here, sir, because this is TGSL. It's a business school, it's a school of leadership, but without the support of the executive, the accounting officer, it can't pull off events of this nature. By the way, this is positioning. This is forging partnerships with critical stakeholders and ensuring that we maintain the relevance. That finding solutions for Africa doesn't mean finding them for ourselves. It means finding them for society. A university is a universe of knowledge, so your leadership is appreciated here, that you are part of these discussions. And that's why I know you're busy, but we insist on your presence. Her Excellency, or let me see, she's here. Your Excellency, where is she? Your Excellency, and I got to know that you are actually royalty, so. Dr. Thamalani Nelly Manzini, she's the High Commissioner of South Africa in Mauritius. South Africa today is doing or practicing what we call economic diplomacy. So ambassadors are no longer people who go to countries, attend parties, and they advance the interests of business, South African business interests abroad. So that's why when we get the diplomatic corps being part of this, we appreciate them more than you can imagine. Limpopo is a regional hub of SADC. I need to emphasize that. This highway here is the busiest route in Africa. This N1, the busiest in Africa. R71 is the Maputo Corridor 2.0. Without N4, R71 is the Maputo Corridor, because you keep going on R71, you end up in the Kruger Park, and you're in Mozambique. And you go this way, you end up in Botswana and Namibia. So we're at the cross of the SADC region. So that's why we take the diplomatic corps very seriously, Your Excellency, because you are the ambassador abroad. Yesterday, Prof. Mphahlele had the Bulgarians here, and they were also crediting their presence in South Africa, to the ambassador of South Africa in Bulgaria. So we appreciate your presence here. And yes, you are Professor Matebula's sister. He gave me a full set of notes on how and why. Honorable Rogers Munama, MEC for Lidet. Apart from maybe as much as MEC Popira Matuba, this is the one MEC that is a real supporter of the university, Prof. Mphahlele. And his presence at our event, but his reassurance that we are on the right track is very, very essential, because we are able to know that we are not irrelevant. And you will see very soon how the collaboration between the university and the provincial administration of Limpopo will be pronounced, that you will know it's because of people like yourself. So we appreciate you. And in absentia, MEC Popira Matuba, she's a legend of the university, because whether you're talking about the medical school, the MBCHB program, whether you talk about, she's always there. She's a real supporter. So we acknowledge her. I know she would have been here. If she's not, there's a very good reason. The Office of the Premier, we also acknowledge you, because we are aligning with the province, and without Dr. Ndivuo Malindi, we would not be able to achieve that. I can now say Comrade Polibushiel, Comrade Polibushiel, but she's a member of provincial legislature, so she's still MPL, so we can't be too acquainted. She's still a public representative, but again, another former MEC who did her bit, and the bit was quite a lot to support the university. She's also our student here, so let's emphasize that part. So when we are done with the breakfast, she will have to go to Prof. Mokoena and account on her progress, Prof. Mphahlele. You know that 7th letter of the alphabet, you don't want to get there and start talking the 7th letter of the alphabet. We have quite a lot of people, but under pressure of time, I might skip others. Dadena Pinchabeleng, as the DG, I can't say enough about the relationship between the province and the university. We have the SABC here. Is Opa Mama Bolo here? Oh, yeah, there you go. We appreciate the partnership with the SABC. You are a public broadcaster. Public broadcaster is very important. The public is important. So when there's a story of public interest, like the son of the soil coming to his alma mater to talk about statistics during load shedding, to another professor who's the son of the soil, alma mater, when you bring the SABC here, we appreciate it, because it's up to the broadcaster to inform the public, but we know with limited resources, you cannot be everywhere. So the fact that you prioritized us at an arm's length, on an arm's length basis is very, very appreciated. I have to acknowledge many departments in the provincial administration, and I cannot name them individually. I have to acknowledge, where is Debeila? And I'm acknowledging him not because I want to single him out, but Disero Debeila is a member he's from the Auditor General's office in Limpopo, but he's also a member of ABASA. ABASA is a critical agent for social and economic transformation, because it's the Association for the Advancement of Black Accountants in Southern Africa. So his presence here means we are not just aligned with the provincial admin, but with also the professional lobby, or the community of Limpopo. Dadera Chidi, you're here on behalf of our council, and all professors. I won't mention you, Prof. Sibanda, Prof. Mokoena, Prof. Musandiwa, everybody in the school, Turfloop Graduate School of Leadership. We acknowledge you, we appreciate you. Bear with me, I'm running through the list and looking at the room. Shall I just leave it here, VC, and say, last but not least, let me acknowledge Tlhabirwa here, Morore Ben Mphahlele, his royalty in many respects, but what he has done for this province is immeasurable, highly invaluable. He has done a lot for Stats SA itself. He has done a lot for the university. He continues to do that, and we look forward to having your insights here, sir. And last but not very least, Risenga, I know we go way back, but now you are not just a schoolmate or varsity mate, you are my statistician general now. And I'm very particular about this. It's not about position, you are known for your servant leadership, but most of all, the fact that you come from this university. We are really honored that when you find your busy schedule challenging, you do not forget to join us. Prof. Matebula, I have thanked you enough for coming back to your alma mater. Let's get the show on the road.
Thanks so much, Victor. And now that the cat is out of the bag, that I couldn't introduce my own sister, I think you did a better job than I would have done. I would have hidden it, in fact. So it's nice to call me Prof. Matebula, but I think that from today until Tuesday, please call me Comrade Hlengani. Yeah, please, from today until Monday. After Monday, you can come back and say Prof. Matebula. Because I'm running comrades again wearing Shbelani. Next year I'll run wearing Shbelani in the university's colors, but this time around I told Victor I'm not doing it. I'm staying true to the colors that have been my colors for the times that I've run Shbelani, the comrades. There are a few things before we start. One of them is how we're going to run this given time. One is that I'm going to call the Statistician-General to come and do his presentation. After him, I'll ask Dr. Ben Mphahlele to come and make his comments responding to the Statistician-General. After that, I will have a brief conversation with them. Okay? I just want to make sure that we were on the same page. I'll have a brief conversation with them. After that, I will then open the room for purposes of further questions that the audience may have for clarity or any other matters that may come through out of that. MEC Munama, there's really no reason why any of your entities can't perform well when you have board members sitting here. You shouldn't be advertising for board members. They are here, they are. And you can start with TGSL. There's a business school. They must make sure that they produce board members for you. That then traveling, the DG, one of the sorest things that I ever happens to me is to speak to MECs and heads of departments and staff saying, we are going to Wits University for some course, or some professors from Wits University coming here. We have a business school, and I can promise you this business school is as competent as any other. If nothing else, I'm a product of a Wits Business School. That is in addition to being a product of this university. We have attached the profiles of my people that I'm going to talking to now, the Statistician-General. But there is this legend that gets said, why is he called Statistician-General? And I was sitting in a meeting one day and I was asking of the DGs, why is this one called Statistician-General? Is it because he has two? He's a Statistician-General and he's the head of Statistics South Africa. And someone said, no. There was this debate and the person that was supposed to be Statistician-General said, no. I can't be called like these others. I have to feed all of them numbers. So I can't be called the Director General. I have to be called Statistician-General. And this must be able to be understood across the world as Statistician-General. Because if you say Director General, other people When you go to Mozambique, they won't understand that. When you go to the United States, they won't understand that. But when you say Statistician-General, they already understand that if no one else will tell them about the numbers and what's happening in that country, that can be backed up by numbers, this one will, right? One anecdote about the SG is that I know a lot of very important people, when they go to interviews, they say, please ask the journalist to send me questions first so that I'm prepared. In the country and out of the country, he is the only person I know who insists that he does not want to be sent questions prior. Doesn't want prior notice because he wants to learn by whichever way he gets asked. So if you have to surprise him, he will be able to say, no, you know what, you have surprised me, I'll come back to you, but he has learned that he will have then been prepared the next time around. His name is Risenga Maluleke, and I'm going to ask him to now take the podium and engage with us in a form of presentation, and then that the Mphahlele will join, and then we will then have a conversation as we should. SG.
Program Director for the day, Professor Mphahlele. We must always be very careful who we clap hands for before they present, because we could be headed for serious disappointments. But as my colleague assists here, let me start off by saying that let me do some protocols and note Prof. Mokgalong. Prof. Mokgalong, having been with the university for 50 years, I entered the university 35 years ago in 1988. And I have a very interesting story to tell that there was Rule A19 and Rule A19.1. If you flunk all courses, you go home. Many of you who studied there will remember. So I failed all courses in my first year and passed only mathematics, and it's mathematics that saved me. So learners should never be afraid of mathematics. I do not know, I was wired with a mic, I don't know whether it's the right time to use it and switch this one off, or use this one now. Okay, they say I must use this one now. This one I'll use when I get back there. But let me take note of other dignitaries that are here, all in all of us in this room, but I will also, I would have loved, I'm given 30 minutes by Prof. Mphahlele. I would have loved to acknowledge all of you by name and face, but let me also go ahead and say that I know Her Excellency, the Ambassador is here, the MEC, and perhaps other MECs that I may not have seen, the Director General of the province. When you are here with government, you are always very comfortable. We also have Prof. Sibanda, Prof. Mokoena, and of course, Prof. Mamukhadi, Chief Financial Officer of the University of Limpopo, Miss, not Prof, my apologies. And of course, Mr. Maredi and Victor Homeswane, who came to do a bit of an introduction. I have a long history, Victor and I and others like Mphahlele. We have a lot of experiences with the university, having gone through the difficult days. So Prof. Mokgalong, when you go and start digging for those weapons that are there, don't be surprised when you find decade catapults. Because sometimes it was difficult to bring weapons into university, so we used to carry catapults. You had to carry your books with catapults and some stones. In the event there's a fight between you and the police, because we were occupied. We were what we called an occupied campus by the police and the army. So when it starts, you start shooting with your decade or your catapults. But of course, there is seated with me here, Prof. Mphahlele and Mukhaga Hlabirwa, Mphahlele. I hear that they say it's the Statistics Council for Stats SA. It is the South African Statistics Council, which advises both the Minister and the Statistician-General. He's a former chair. And the Statistician-General and the Minister may sometimes disagree with their pieces of advice. And when we disagree, he has to go and inform the country through Parliament. I also have to go and inform the country through Parliament. And if I do agree with the Minister on issues of directives on statistical independence, I also practice the same. So that independence of the tripod is quite interesting. I'm told that I need to talk to you about South Africa in numbers, but let us start. I'm not a very good public speaker, so if I happen to stammer, just finish for me. Now, what I want us to get to straight is understand where official statistics places itself rather than general statistics. And let me give a challenge, Prof. Mphahlele. There is no university in South Africa that teaches official statistics. We send our students all the way to Morore University, to Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. We send all of them to Cote d'Ivoire, because these are institutions of the United Nations. And then the rest, we come and train ourselves, each other in-house. So that is an area that we might want, and in the area of artificial intelligence, the business school could even be a place of kind of promoting official statistics. But where is official statistics? I've brought these slides which talk to input, process, output, outcomes, and impact to place official statistics properly. It's because usually I get asked, Statistician-General, come and tell us if the money we are pumping into this program is enough. It's not my job. It's not my job. I can measure it later in production, in GDP, but I can't measure budget. So I'll use the Department of Housing analogy. When we build houses, the number of workers, the budgets, and everything we put are input. Those are input indicators. So we'll know the number of people, how many rands we are spending, and billions of rands we're spending. Process indicators are the number of houses that we build per month, per day, per year, or something like that. And the output is the number of houses that we build. A bit of our work does go to output, but not a lot. We focus on outcomes. So outcomes is the number of people who have access to housing, different housing. And of course, impact is not our work. This is an area where universities, the HSRC, and other institutions should deal with. And of course, these are areas that need to be sharpened, because there are a lot of issues where there's a disjuncture between numbers and policy. And if we don't measure impact, we will get lost in the space of numbers. Now, let us talk about how many people are in South Africa. Leave the census. We are going to come back with the census. The census is a complete count, but we are using census 2001, 2011 to come up with an estimate in what we call media estimates, to say there are 60.6 million people. I often get asked, Statistician-General, you are including people who are not documented in South Africa. It's not my job to worry whether someone is documented or not. My job is to count everyone who finds themselves within the borders of South Africa. Applause. Because it's an agreement we have as statisticians. Look at, for example, a place called Sunnyside or Berea or in Johannesburg. You could have a lot of undocumented people. They need electricity, water, they need ablution facilities, and if you can't plan for them because they are not documented. So Minister Krele and I always fight about this issue. I'm saying go and catch them, but I won't tell you where they are. It's not my job to even report where they are. I deal with matters that income of people. I don't go to SARS. The commissioner of SARS is a good friend of mine, but I don't go to him and say, there are the people who don't pay taxes. He must go and find them. So firstly, let's agree, 51% of the country's population is female. And of course, out of those, let me mention that 16.1 find themselves in Gauteng, 11.5 in KwaZulu-Natal, 7.2 million in the Western Cape. The three provinces actually account for 57.5%, almost 60% of the country's population. When you add the Eastern Cape with 6.7 million, which comes with about 11%. We come to about 70% of the country's population in the 4 provinces. So if I was a politician, I would know where to go and make sure my political party is strong. Because that's where I'll get my votes. Now, of course, come number 5, Limpopo, with 5.9 million, accounting for about 10% of the country's population, sitting at 9.8% to be exact. But all these people are quite interesting because we have a young population. We have a young population. We can see that young people up to 34 years account for more than 60% of the country's population. So the first 2 colors that you see, the green and the gray, account for young people up to 34 years. And of course, as we do so, as we talk about young people, we can see a dip somewhere there. There is a dip somewhere there. So what happens is that in the years back, 2000, 2001, before we had access to ARVs, we had a lot of people dying. And as people were dying, fertility declined. And fertility, I'll come to that. When I say fertility, is the number of children that can be born, live births to a woman in her lifetime. We don't use men as an indicator. They are not a dependable indicator of how many children they have. Wait until you attend their funeral. So we use women because women stay with their children all their life. Now, what happens is that over time, those people who were children, these are people who were children, tend to have their own children. And of course, that is why you see a rise here. So this we will always have in our population. Now, let us look at where, when we talk about fertility rate, the number of live births born, look at where the highest number is. It's in Limpopo. Yeah. There is Limpopo. What happens, I need to contextualize this issue of fertility because, and contributing to the population growth in the country. If a man and a woman have 2 children, they haven't contributed anything. If you are below 2.1% of contributions, you haven't because you have just replaced yourself. So I want to see those who have replaced themselves in this room. But the issue is here. It's that once we go beyond 2.1%, and I often get asked, what about people who are married in polygamy? In polygamy, we treat the husband and the wife with each wife as an entity. Yeah, we don't treat, that man is not an indicator. The indicator is the woman. So if him and the wife have 2 children, they've replaced themselves. If him and the other wife have 3 children, they've contributed to population growth. So now, we can see, look at Limpopo here. It's contributing higher than, the dotted line is the national average. Limpopo, Eastern Cape, Northern Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, and Northwest. Limpopo has even overtaken KwaZulu-Natal. Look at Gauteng. The Premier of Gauteng, that's the one on the right-hand side. The Premier of Gauteng always says to me, but what is it? I say, Premier, you are leading a province of very lazy people. Now, but let us look at how Gauteng benefits. Look at Gauteng there. It has the highest population. The population that goes into Gauteng is actually not born there. They receive from outside because their fertility rate is very low. It's the lowest in the country. Yet they have the highest population. So everyone wants to go to Gauteng. But I was asked by the SABC, but why do you think people go to Gauteng? One is that Gauteng accounts for about 33% of the country's economy and nominal GDP. But not only that, it's because of the time it has had and an opportunity it has had to develop itself, has allowed itself to lead, even when the extractive mining in terms of gold is no longer there. It was able to overtake the Northern Cape, which started with diamond. Diamond was the first discovered before gold was discovered. So, but the point is the poor always follow the rich, all over the world. So I sometimes hear, many of us here, we will have people, including those undocumented migrants, setting up some kukunyana plastic view next to our houses. And we say they are making the prices of our houses go down. We can never wish them away. The poor always follow the rich because they have to eat off the crumbs that fall from the rich man or the rich woman's desk. And it's cheaper for them to go to work than to have to travel to work because they don't have the money. But let us look at what drives the population of Gauteng, for example. There is a bar there called Limpopo, there. It's the highest contributor to the population of Gauteng. I heard speakers, a speaker after speaker saying, we need to stop that traffic. It's too late by the time we want to stop them. They actually leave when they are supposed to go and start schooling. And when they go there to start schooling, and some of them go and join uncles and aunts. So we need to make sure that we have facilities that keep them. And this goes beyond the business school. It's an issue that government needs to address. Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and others, we can say, yes, they had oil, they had an opportunity to develop themselves. But in an era of artificial intelligence, we cannot say we don't have an opportunity to develop ourselves when we have all the brains, some of them gathered in this room today. Now, let us start and look at poverty and social issues. We are saying that if you do not earn, and please don't ask me, is the money that is being given by National Treasury, 350 rands enough? Is it enough? I won't answer that. But why do we always need statistics? Statistics do not say we should always solve the problems here and now. Statistics say we must always know where the problems are so that we can engage between those that are in the policy space and those that are elected into office, and those who elect them into office can agree on facing programs as to when our opportunity will come. So there's no point when people are marching there to say we want a tar road when we know we want to put it there, because we need to tell them when it's going to come their way. But we must know. We must know and remember that people have waited for too long for democracy to touch them. And of course, we need to do something. And of course, when you don't earn 663,000 rands in South Africa per person in a household, you are classified food poor. We classify you as poor if you don't earn 945,000 rands. No, not 945 rands, sorry, 945 rands, because we track poverty on the lower bound. Now, we have what we call South Africa, the multidimensional poverty index. We have what we call SAMPI, because it's the South African Multidimensional National Poverty Index. And we use it to look at whatever you see that shows a lot of darker color, it's where poverty is in the country. So you can see the Western Cape doesn't show much poverty, Gauteng doesn't show much poverty. But if you look at rural provinces, especially in the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal, so that is why 10 of the most poorest provinces, municipalities are in the Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal. Now, what drives poverty? What drives poverty? It's the top two bars. It's issues of employment as well as years of schooling. And only when people are educated, education. Only when people are educated, they can get better opportunities to take up employment. These two, education and employment, account for 63% as drivers of poverty or as causes of poverty. So if we address them, we are actually going to beat the issue of poverty. Now, let us look at grants. We are saying that, and grants are here, right here in the middle. This is the color of grants. So let us look at Limpopo, for example. Salaries only account for 40.2%. And of course, grants account for 35.2%. When you take grants and remittances combined, they account far more than salaries in this province. It's almost the same like in KwaZulu-Natal, the Free State, almost the same in all rural provinces. And with remittances, there is a catch. So I send my mother money in the village. She receives it, she goes to the bank and she learns how to press the buttons, she gets some money. And she gets very happy that, this machine gives me money when my son sends me the money. Now she takes that money, she goes to Pick and Pay. She acquires goods and services. And then the following day, Pick and Pay takes that money, banks it in the national account and it goes back to Gauteng. So money left Gauteng yesterday, it acquired services in Limpopo, went back to Gauteng the following day. If a rand, any currency that doesn't circulate up to 7 times in a neighborhood will not make an impact. It will not change the state of the economy of that neighborhood. How do we make sure that money circulates in our neighborhood? So those accusations, Prof. Mphahlele, may come in handy that you own half the businesses in Turfloop. But indeed, if money is circulating there, so be it. But we should not actually throw away the baby with the bathwater. Because as we can see, in terms of improvements, the growth in the number of accesses to grants from household as well as persons level, vulnerability to hunger is declining, both at household as well as at the person level. Now, let us talk about the labor markets. There are about 16.2 million people employed in South Africa as we talk today. We haven't reached where we were pre-COVID times. We're at 16.4 million. 7.9 million of those are not employed. They are those that account for the 32.9%. But we need to understand this issue. When we say someone is not unemployed, it means they are actively looking for employment. So when we come and interview people and ask them, did you look for employment in the week prior to the interview, and you say yes, and we want to probe further, then you are unemployed. But if you have never been looking for employment, you are not, according to the narrow definition of the International Labour Organization, you are not unemployed. But I'll come to that because I always get beaten. You know Angus Deaton in his book, The Greatest Escape, says it's always critical to understand problems so that we can provide the right solutions to them. Now, what happens is that when we take the 7.9 million together with the 3.3 million people who are your discouraged work seekers that we have seen in the previous slide in the gray here, somewhere there, as well as another 700,000 who didn't look for employment for other reasons other than being discouraged, but would have taken up employment had it been available, we come to 11.9 million people unemployed in South Africa. That's a real picture of unemployment. We call that the expanded definition. But of course, graduate unemployment is the lowest. So the work that we are doing here at this graduate school at the University of Limpopo, creating more graduates, it actually lowers chances of unemployment. It actually makes sure that people that have education are able to get employment. So let us look at the unemployment rate for the country. It's sitting at 32.9%. The unemployment rate for graduates is actually sitting at 10.6%. It's the lowest. It's followed by other tertiary, those who go and get a 6 months, 1 year certificate, post-matric certificate. Those with matric or lower are actually higher than the national average. I often get asked, where do you think the challenge of unemployment is in terms of the population group? The unemployment rate of whites is 7.5%, far much lower than the national one of 32.9%. Indian Asians, 14.3%, coloreds, 22.4%, and black Africans are higher than the national average, sitting at 37.2%. It's even worse when you are a black female. Your unemployment rate is sitting at 39.9%, about 7 percentage points higher than the national one. It's a serious challenge. Because when we say your black Africans are in the majority, yet the problems sit with them the most of unemployment, teenage pregnancy, everything, and we want a better life for all, we have to get to deal with this matter a lot more seriously and soon. It's not me. Don't blame me. Don't blame me. In his book, the late and former Egyptian president Anwar Sadat, that small print of 1978, if you go to the top of page 125, yes, he says, what is it that keeps me lying awake at night? When I have to see my people are suffering and I have to decide that this is the time to fight. If we don't understand that we have a challenge in the country, we have to make more strides. So what keeps us awake at night? But it's even worse when you are a woman. Because when you are a woman, women are earning 76% of what men are earning. No, there's no pay parity yet. It's still, we have to go and search. I won't tell you where those problems are. Go and search for them. But here we are using the median level of payment. The median level of payment tells us that we still do not have enough women in the place of employment. That is why we have this problem. It's even worse when you are in Limpopo. The lowest levels of payments are in this province. Women earn 66.2% of what men are earning. The highest are in the Eastern Cape and the Western Cape. Graduate women, so we say when they are educated, they are safe. They earn only 92.3% of what men are earning. Young people even have much more challenges. 15 to 24 years, their unemployment rate is sitting at 62.1%. Those aged 25 to 34 years, their unemployment rate is sitting at 40.7%. Prof. Matebul, I'm left with 6 minutes. And I will stop when my time comes to an end. We have 10.2 million young people aged 15 to 24 years in our country, regardless of where they are. 3.7 million are not in employment, education, or training. They wake up and sit. If you don't believe me, go to Sipho here, go to Mamelodi, go to Mankweng, go to Nkowanko. You will see them walking, morning to sunset. And when the mother leaves for work, tells the daughter, please remain behind and cook my daughter. And the mother finds the daughter is cooked every day. Every day, the mother finds the daughter is cooked. 9 months later, the mother comes back from work and finds the daughter pregnant. And the mother wants to understand, but how did it happen? She was always at home every day. The challenges are much more immense. The challenges are much more immense. We still have a lot of young people in education that are creeping far more than their age, in secondary school, far more than their age. But we have more in primary, lesser in secondary school. This color that we are seeing, this, I want to say, this color, purple color is universities. We don't have people. Look at the people we have in secondary school. Look at those who enter university. The other color here is other institutions like your TVET. So we don't have enough students entering universities in South Africa. Yet we know graduate unemployment is lower. So when they are graduates, their unemployment will be lower. It's not me. My job is to tell the numbers. So don't blame me. Don't blame the messenger. We go and ask children, why are you not attending school? Because we find them all over the country, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal. The boys are saying that education is not important, or they talk about poor academic performance. You can see there the boys with poor academic performance. The girls are performing well. Their academic performance is lower. Actually, the girls are performing well at school than the boys. So I often hear this thing that, you know, you need a lot of men to be there, and it's a facade. Women are actually overtaking men. They are more in our country. They are performing more at school. So what is it? Why do we stop them from developing? For women who are here today and those that are not here, you should know that emancipation is never given, it's taken. It's never given, it's taken. If we, as the majority of the people in South Africa, never took up arms and went to do everything, including those decades at the university, we would not have been emancipated by now. So, how it comes when we are emancipated, we are not ready to emancipate our women folk? It's not for the Statistician-General to answer, it's for the Statistician-General to pose the questions, because the numbers always point him where the numbers are. Now, here is the girl child. The girl child says, family commitment. Family commitment is 1% is the boy. Look at the girl, it's 13% family commitment. When there's an aunt or an uncle who is sick, they take the girl child to go and look after the uncle or the aunt. But these girls are also looking after their own children. We have what we call recorded live births. So we went to Home Affairs, we get those births and we come and process them at StatSA. In the year 2021, yes, 4 children aged 11 went to register their own children as mothers. 38 children aged 12 went to register their own children as mothers. 416 children aged 13 went to register their own children as mothers. 2,272, yes, 2,272 went to register their own children as mothers. So if we don't think we have a problem, it's when we have these children. And in some of the cases, the fathers are 10 years or older. To fathers to children of children. It's unlike a father to a child of a woman. Prof. Mokhalong, there is your problem. Whites access education better. Indians, Asians are catching up with the whites. Although they have actually shown, but they are catching up with the whites. The coloreds and the black Africans have much more serious problems in terms of accessing education. My time is up and I haven't spoken about the economy. He says I have 10 minutes, but I want to know, on a popular vote, do you allow me to proceed or to stop? MEC, I want us to go to a branch meeting tonight to see who will be asked to proceed. That's on a lighter note to my MEC. He knows I love him very much. I would never stand when he's standing. Our economy is sitting at 0.4% as of the first quarter in terms of growth. And in case we don't think we have money in this economy, this is real GDP. This is the real money that is sitting. In one quarter, on the production side, the transactions that have occurred in our country are 1.152 trillion. So this country has money. It depends on who has the money. This country has money. We are no longer talking billions, MEC. We are talking trillions. This is how it has fared over time. But this is not the slide I want to come to. I want to come to this slide. This slide, let us look at 2008. Obviously, we had the global economic meltdown. It happened in organized economies. It hadn't reached us. So you and I know from being in the villages, when it rains in the mountains, it will take time before water accumulates in the valleys. So that's what happened. Our slump was in 2009. That's when our economy went in the negative. But after that, we started recovering 2010, 2011. After 2011, our economy hasn't performed well. It was worse when we reached COVID. This is COVID. Now we are looking here, we think it's rising because we think that's what we call an aberration in economic terms. because we were starting from a very low base. So we actually had a growth that was much more higher. Look at where we were in the year 2022. We were sitting at 2%. And if we are growing first quarter at 0.4%, I don't speculate, I measure. So wait until I measure at the end of the year. The IMF says we will grow at 0.1%. And an economy that doesn't grow will cause problems. Now, what is the structure of our economy? The biggest chunk is taken by finance, followed by personal services, because we spend a lot more money on personal services in private education, private healthcare, and the like, and we leave public institutions like this one, and we run to Gauteng, and we get all the facilities there. Followed by trade, followed by manufacturing. Manufacturing is sitting at 13.7%. Actually, manufacturing was number 1 in 1994. If you go to those firms in Sishiko, they are standing empty, many of them. If you go to Babelege, if you go to Nkowankowa, if you go to Eitenhage in the Eastern Cape, they are standing empty. We used to manufacture tires here, Bridgestone, everything, radial, everything. We don't have them here. That is why you find that finance is leading, followed by personal services, followed by catering, trade, catering, and accommodation, and fourth is manufacturing. There it is. Actually, look at how manufacturing has been falling. All the way falling. Everything, even the glass on our tables made in China. Are we manufacture a glass? Made in China. Water that we drink, when you look at the bottle, made in China. I'm not supposed to say I'm supposed to show where the challenges and the successes are. Now, let us talk about prices. Everyone gets excited, Prof. Matebula. Everyone gets, and he was with the Reserve Bank at some stage, being a banker himself. Everyone gets excited that, inflation is falling. And of course, they say we are frustrated. The governor of the Reserve Bank is actually tightening the news. Every governor of a central bank the world over, if inflation starts going out of control, like we have seen, it was lowest year and it started rising. Even if it drops a bit, they are wired the same, increase the interest rate. Because you will discourage lending. People will not go and take money where they service their costs in terms of interest. But it's different. It's different. Because the majority of the people who are not actually bankable, when they can't access money, they go to the Mashonisa. And the Mashonisa charges them at 40% interest rate. These are the prices of food that went up the highest. Onions, maize meal, cake flour, samp, everything. These are the things that our people are eating every day. Onions, if you go to a shop, the price has gone very high. Now, where do the poor, the gray color is for the poor, the other red color is for the rich. Where do the poor spend their money? I just want us to focus on these 2 points. Transport and here, food. When you take transport and food alone, they account for about 43%. So the poor spend their money on food and traveling. And if fuel is very expensive, like we have seen in the previous paraffin, and of course, petrol and other things are expensive, and food is becoming expensive, we are sitting with a challenge. We're sitting with a time bomb. Because there comes a time where the people won't afford to have food. And since the poor always follow the rich, they are setting up every day next to our houses because they service us as domestic workers. There comes a day where they will stop us from going to work. There comes a day where they will say, I want that German sedan. I want that German off-roader. Madiba once called those people who are doing well fat cats. So they will go for us as the middle class. So we have to address these issues. It's even worse. The poorest households, their inflation is actually much more higher. It's the highest in the country. Because we measure that. The ones that are doing well, decile 10, it's the lowest. And of course, when you look at inflation in terms of for pensioners, even pensioners are not protected. It's higher than the national one. We are sitting at 6.8 inflation. That for pensioners is sitting at 7.5. Prof. Matebula, in the time that you gave me, I'm left with 2 minutes, and I have a story to tell. The story to tell says Ndihela Kwala. Those who understand Xitsonga knows that this Shangan is about to finish. Because when you say Ndihela Kwala, it means Kifetsa Onamu. But there's a context to this. There's a context to this. When I was young, growing up in the village, our mothers could not read and write. So they used us as their children to write letters to our fathers, their husbands, and their partners in urban centers. And as we were writing those letters, our mothers could not finish a letter with "I love you" or "I miss you, my husband," because those words were not supposed to be heard by children coming out of a mother. The children, according to village legend, would go deaf. If the children wrote those words, "I miss you" or "I love you, my husband," they would go blind. So they had to come up with a standard way to conclude the letter, saying Ndihela Kwala. In Shivenda, they say Ndiferela Hanef. In Sipedi, Kifetsa Hanamu. In isiZulu, they would say Angnamaning. In isiXhosa, they would say Nkeda khona lapha ngomkhulu umbuliso. In Sipedi, Setswana, Kifetsa Honamo, as I've said. KaSisuthu Saburwa, they would say Kaditumediso na watsena. So everyone who was disadvantaged, who could not express themselves, had to find a way to survive. Never and never again, Washu Mandela, should we allow any part of our society, be it children, women, black Africans or otherwise, to be disadvantaged, that they cannot express themselves, even on matters that matter the most to their hearts, like love. If we say we want to make a difference, the difference starts today. It starts now, because we are in charge of the country. In Sipedi, when you go and pay Lobola, and they say, Lobola, pay Maluleke, pay, and you pay, and you run out of money, and they say, it looks like you have no money anymore. You say, Muleti Sehoba. So, program director, I've given you all that you asked for. Muleti Sehoba, let me thank you. The next slide is blank. I thank you.
Okay. I'm sure the professors that taught Risenga statistics did not think that he would be running for office. Politicians must be worried. Guys that with this wealth of information start to be this passionate, your branch members might just become problematic. Morore, Tate Ben Mphahlele. I'm not going to say the stories, because you might just relate much more than I can relate. So I'm going to ask you to come and respond to what the Statistician-General has said. You are called a discussant. That is the word you learned in Bulgaria. Was it Bulgaria? Somewhere there. But this is your... oh, it was Korea. We go a long way with that the Ben Mphahlele. But anyway, that's your turn, and then we'll have a conversation after that.
I must say mona, ke tlogetse di-specs tsa ka mona, ke kgone ho bona gore o na le peke mo kgauswi le Prof mo fatshe. Ee, o berekile. Let me be allowed to adopt the protocols that have already been established. And I'm going to be talking on a very much more serious stuff. I think the biggest problem we have in this country is that we know what apartheid did to us by minimizing our ability to learn. And we ignore that. We keep on pumping money in education on an issue called costed norms. For every teacher, there must be 25 children. For every classroom, there must be 40 children. So we are cost-driven, not result-driven. So, as the SG has said, we have, and in fact, I'm going to ignore this thing because I must talk from the heart. We have an unemployment level. You know, the graduates are not that many unemployed. And I must surprise you, the people that are not educated are the least unemployed in this country. Where our unemployment problem is from the people that attempted high school and those that have passed matric. Now, that amounts to 85% of the unemployed population, of the unemployed young people. That population of the unemployed young people, 85% of it are the children that have either passed matric or failed matric. Now that's very scary, because these very children that have passed matric or failed matric, they are at the childbearing age. And because they are idle and unemployed, they make children. And then the social security grant kicks in. So we are becoming socially a dependent society, that without government, there won't be any other way in which we can make a living. So poverty depends. And I think you saw the numbers in terms of the education of the white population, education of the black population, and so on and so forth. They are beginning to become much more educated than blacks. Their graph is going down. And yet we have good policies. You know, we've got the National Development Plan, which we must be able to say by year 2030, this is what we need to be able to achieve. We got that. And we keep on failing to meet those targets. And I'm asking, National Treasury, why are you funding education when it doesn't meet the targets? Oh, why? No, we have costed norms. But if you are saying for every teacher, there must be 23 children. So the more the children, the more teachers you have, and the more you spend on this education. That yields negatively. And contribute to economic degeneration. On the 6th, about 2 days ago, the IMF published a report on South Africa. Part of the things that they are saying is that without you having to do economic transformation, whatever the case may be, they are saying we do not have the skills in this country. And so Japan said it at some stage. So a time will come, and the time has arrived, when this very government, this very economy of South Africa would not be able to afford the social wage. And then you, most of us who can run away, will get into planes and go and live somewhere else, because this place will become a place. We are now borrowing to fund social spending, instead of borrowing to make it a point that we are growing the economy. I think the long and short of it is, when you look at the spending on education, I just took a sample from 1996, basic education spending in provinces without including the spending by the national department. From 1996 to 2017, we spent 2.1 trillion rand to produce the unemployable youth. Now, I mean, we talk many a time, MEC, about fruitless expenditure and stuff like that. Doesn't this qualify? And I really don't believe that the young South Africans are stupid, that they cannot learn. I think the answer lies in, maybe you don't have teachers that are able to teach. And we spend this, if you look at the amount of money that is paid to the salaries, and then the outcome of what we are paying for. Is it really good spending? Why is the Auditor General not auditing the performance against the National Development Plan? Why? I believe there lies our problem. If you have policies that you cannot implement because you're not taking care of the base, you're not actually honing out those skills that needs to implement those policies. That's where the problem is. We are at this university, perhaps just to show you some few things, maybe because I might be, this is the graph of the spending that I've already talked about. Now, if you look at this unemployment by race, the top is the total unemployment. The bottom is black unemployment. People that are unemployed. Ke batho ba baso. Ke batho ba baso, I include the coloreds and Indians, Ma-Africa. Shiba, the red one. They're unemployed. If you look at the gap between total unemployment and this graph, you can see that apartheid is not dead. Whites are there. in the bottom there. They are not unemployed. Again, you look at youth unemployment, the ones that are matric and the rest is the red part. Youth unemployment is about 60% of the total unemployment level. Fortunately, it's been dropping. It's been dropping. It was 72% in some year back, but now it's dropping. It's about 60%. If you solve that, you reduce unemployment by 56% in this country. Now, I've said this because I just want to emphasize that when you have a fraction, 1/10, all right? The 1 is a numerator, the 10 is a denominator. Now, the degree of your success to come to unity is how fast you are able to accelerate the numerator to be equal or more than the 10. So we should not be saying that we have so many. Every year, please, every year, we celebrate the outcomes of matric results. And we're cheating ourselves. We are not having the outcomes in the areas that are dictated to by our National Development Plan. Now, if you look at, I mean, this basically is a torturing experience, Prof. Matebule. Very torturing. We cannot and dare not ignore the fact that the basic area where we should be able to advance and become competitive in this country is to hone the skills of the young population that we have. And finally, this equitable share that we are actually getting money from National Treasury is called equitable share. Okay. It is not looking at reigniting growth in areas which were marginalized by the apartheid system. Most of the time, when we talk about Limpopo, we forget the fact that it was a war zone because it was seen as a threat to the stability of the country since freedom fighters can ooze into the country from neighboring SADC. Now that has become a benefit for us. And we deal with the situation that says, if you want an SEZ in Tuvatsa, show us the prepared investors that need to go there, then we will actually designate the SEZ. Despite all the things that are happening, why don't you take a lead as government and take that risk? Because no any other person can go out and spend 100 million rand to conduct a feasibility study on some project in an area where it's not clear whether government has got a policy directive in that direction. No one. And this is not an industrialized area. It's a rural area with a heavy deposits of platinum and so on. It's good for the current wave. It's beneficial, the current wave of clean energy. And yet we say, let's have the investors first. And then we can designate. Get in there first and call the investors to say, this is the direction we are. Thank you very much.
Ntate Mphahlele, thank you so much. I think, do these lapels now work? They work, okay. Ntate Mphahlele, Baria Vereka Yano. one of the things I forgot to do when the Statistician-General has landed in this province, and he's gonna be like those others, leave and go to Johannesburg in Gauteng. But I neglected to indicate that we have the provincial head of Statistics South Africa amongst us. Very unassuming, you will pass him because you will think he's not built for war like a Matebula. Ntambeden Mukwebo, do you want to stand up? That is the head of Statistics South Africa in Limpopo, though we call them provincial head. And when we talk the numbers of Limpopo now, you must know the guy is there. The SG may have to ask him to answer some questions. SG, you released the GDP numbers just a day ago. What do these numbers tell us? I know that everybody jumped on the 0.4% growth for first quarter, but when I went to dig a little bit, I realized that in reality, the economy is actually growing by 0.1%, not necessarily 0.4%. But all of us have celebrated the 0.4%. We have as well looked at the primary sectors and secondary sectors and saw what those are doing. But beyond the fanfare, what do these numbers tell us?
Well, for starters, we need to unpack the 0.4% that we have seen in the first quarter. It rides on the backbone of what we have seen in the second quarter of 2022, where our economy decreased by 1.8%. So we saw a decrease. We saw in the third quarter of 2022 an increase where our economy increased by 0.8%. And in the fourth quarter of 2024, it went to decrease by 1.1%. When I say decrease, it means it went to the negative. And now we are picking up this 0.4 in the second quarter of, in the first quarter of 2023. What we are seeing a seesaw, negative, positive, negative, positive. And economists say our economy is behaving sideways. And when an economy behaves sideways, it cannot guarantee which way it will go. The second quarter we are yet to measure. But I just want us to look at the two sectors in this first quarter that contributed the most, Program Director. In that it was manufacturing. Manufacturing contributed 0.2 percentage points, as well as finance, real estate, and business. Whereas manufacturing grew at 1.5%, and finance grew at 0.6%. Yet in the slide that I showed earlier, the biggest chunk of our economy is in the finance area, and manufacturing is number 4. So it means that that growth that we are seeing is very close to a zero, and anything can go either way, especially when you look at the sector that drove it. The second issue is that manufacturing particularly was driven by food and beverages, which are not heavily dependent on electricity. So the machinery and equipment and other steel products, they didn't show. And when they don't show, it shows that the impact of load shedding is starting to come in our area. I must admit that there were a lot of speculations that would grow in the negative. We're going to go into recession. Some, Prof, even called it technical recession. It's a jargon that is used by economists. There's no difference between technical recession and recession. If I'm hungry, does it matter whether I'm technically hungry or hungry? So the point is, one thing that our economy has shown also is resilience, but it can't be resilient for long in the face of load shedding. Thank you.
That Mphahlele, 353 people, 353,000 people that left a Limpopo between 2016 and 2021 have now permanently relocated to Gauteng. 353. In the main, those are skilled-based people. What impact does this board for the province of Limpopo in respect of skills? And more so, what sort of impact will this have for the next coming election? Because it means that Limpopo is negative 353 for Gauteng and 488,000 in total.
I think, yeah. The relationship between Gauteng and Limpopo is not only a when I was growing up as a young man, when I was growing up as a young man, my first port of call was to go to Gauteng. That's why I found my wife. So, and there is always this relationship. If you look at what we call the tree, you see Limpopo as like a generator of young people, and as they grow, the tree goes in this way. In the middle, it gets constricted, and then when it gets older, the population gets older, they come back. So that has been the path of that. And in terms of the reason for that is that always there is a hope that you will get a better life. You get educated here, you go to Gauteng, you get a better life, you come back. But I think when you look at the future, not the political future in terms of elections, the cattle of growth for the country is going to have to come from Limpopo. If we stop government from behaving like a bank, where they say, show us the investment and then we'll come through. Policy has to change. And in looking at the basic fundamental, the potential competitiveness of Limpopo, it means that resources need to flow this way and lock into the 300 million people of the SADC market as we are the center. Now, I don't think really that there is going to be issues about the elections as it would affect Limpopo, because Limpopo has been voting persistently for one party since the advent of this democracy. So I see that trend continue, especially as we begin to celebrate the death of load shedding, as it is happening now. So you're probably going to see the same pattern going through. But I'm not sure whether that kind of 300,000 people that are there will actually affect the voting in Gauteng. But rest assured, I don't think Limpopo will ever change in terms of its voting styles.
SG, and I'll come to this issue that Mphahlele of the 353 back. South Africa has a very nice relationship with Nigeria. And that relationship is further defined by the fact that South Africa comes second to Nigeria in terms of unemployment rate. Nigeria being 32% and South Africa being 33% Nigeria, 32% South Africa. Not so sure whether this is the official numbers or this is the expanded definition of unemployment. If it is the other side, would you take us through slightly more deeper on what this means to be second to Nigeria on high unemployment rate of 32%? And I know Limpopo is about, if you use the unexpanded number, it's about 48%.
Prof, let us start off by placing South Africa from the economic side. South Africa used to be the first economy on the continent. It is now third after Nigeria and Egypt. And in terms of strength, it's not the strongest. You can take Mauritius. It's got a smaller economy, but its economy is very strong, so it can withstand resilience. It's resilient. It can withstand bashing from either side. I don't want to use the economy of Botswana because it's very much closely linked to us in terms of the way the rand pegs other currencies. But let's come to the point that you are raising of unemployment. Indeed, yes, Nigeria is leading, and we are using the narrow definition, both of us. And the narrow definition is that you only take those who are actively looking for employment. You will actually put the discouraged work seekers in the expanded definition. Now, the first thing that you are facing when you look at the commonalities of our unemployment is that both of them in Nigeria and South Africa affect young people. The unemployment rate of young people in South Africa is sitting at 62.1%, and I'm talking 15 to 24 years. If you take 25 to 34 years, you're sitting at about 40.7%. The unemployment rate of youth in Nigeria is relatively higher than ours, as we have seen. But then, here is the catch. When you look at the unemployment rate of women in Nigeria, they don't have a similar setting like ours. In our case, we have 4 population groups. In their case, they have largely one population group, Black Africans. The unemployment rate of women doesn't reach the levels where we are reaching in our case. So that's where the differences are. The second issue is the development of the informal sector in Nigeria. It's highly developed, and it's no longer dependent on government to pump in as much money. It's self-sufficient. Whereas in our case, the informal sector relies on government. But there's even much more of a serious challenge. This issue that I raised about women is not as light as we should treat it. We should treat it much more seriously. Whenever there's a group of women cooking food on the roadside, so when you go down out of Polokwane towards Nirvana, you will find women that are cooking there. The moment you set up stalls with gas stoves and you put electricity whenever it can reach them, all of a sudden the face of women have changed. It's men who are managing them. If government pumps money into agriculture, when they give women handheld hoes to till the land, it's women. The moment they put tractors, the drivers all of a sudden are men. So there is something that we are not addressing in our society that needs a broader engagement. Thanks.
That suggests agreement. And Mphahlele, you have touched on this because the SG spoke about the fact that the more people get into university, the lesser they are unemployed. When you spoke, you indicated that, well, that's not where the problem is. The problem is on these ones that have attempted to go to matric and did not make it and all that. What is it that you are seeing between these numbers that we're talking about, if you contrast it with what government of Limpopo has done in respect of whether it's Fita, Homo, towards this side, this SEZ, or is the one that is in Musina? Are we seeing any movement towards making sure that the people at least are a little bit more employed in the advent of those SEZ?
I think the SEZ are still in the budding. They haven't actually made a substantial contribution to the levels of employment in the country, in the province. But the mining sector, which is now the primary sector that is fueling the need to upgrade to industrialization, has actually made a substantial contribution. In the year 2000, in this province, and in Sekhukhune in particular, for every one person who was employed, there were 19 others that were depending on that income. And for now, taking the statistics from the population survey, the last sample that SA has done, the ratio has declined from 19 to 8.31. That's 56% reduction in that dependency index. Now, just to benchmark it, Prof, Gauteng and Western Cape, their dependency index is about 3. For every one person that is earning an income, there are 3 people that are relying on that income. So for that reason, I believe the mining and all these developments that has actually taken place have contributed. Vembe, it was about 8, now it's about 6. So there is a general trend in terms of the improvement in levels of dependency if we measure poverty in those terms. But the dependency ratios are still very high. That is why the pain is still felt substantially in the province. What's the second part of the question? Oh, good.
SG, when you travel to and using R81, which passes Gia, and then you take a detour out of Gia via Tomo, you find you cross a river before you find a village called Ante, and you find women still fetching water from that river, or you find some donkey carriages that are carrying wood. How does that relate, or in the numbers that you're doing, how does this relate to the apartheid spatial planning as you dig deeper? Because that may just be an example of many other villages in this province, and maybe more in the Eastern Cape, where people cross rivers in drums, and KwaZulu-Natal, where kids can't go to school because the river is full because of the last night's rain.
The benefit that Prof has is that him and I come from neighboring villages that border the Kruger National Park. So we use the same route when we go home, where we were born. So we share similar sentiments. But I'm glad, Prof, you have spoken also about what sustains in the Eastern Cape and other parts of the country. Firstly, I want us to talk about colonialism and apartheid and the role of statistics into understanding spatial planning. So my son comes from school one day and he tells me that they were doing a history lesson and the teacher was saying the way things are, it's because blacks chose where to settle, whites chose where to settle. So I realized that in the olden days, not of Marco Polo, everyone says Marco Polo is the most traveled person on earth. I beg to differ. Ibn Battuta from Morocco was the most traveled person. So you had to do what you call rihla, to go and observe for yourself what has happened. So I took my son and said, let's leave Pretoria, let's drive down to Mphahlele. So this is a young boy of about, he's now 11, he was about 8 years. So I said, let's drive down. So after we drove down, I showed him the places like Nobody where the university is, at Turfloop, Mokoena. And we went into Mphahlele, where the former Minister of Finance tweets from every day. In Johannesburg. And we went down into Tzaneen. We went to Mphahlele. We even came back and went past, with a lot of respect, we went past Nwamito. I know that you and Ambassador Manzini come from, that's your heritage. We went past, so when we arrived in the village called Alten, I asked the young man, so you think the blacks would go and choose the dry places and the whites would choose the tropical lushy places? It's because before apartheid, colonialism, they studied the topography of our country and the rainfall patterns. And once they understood that in 1913, when the Land Act was enacted and blacks were disenfranchised and be left landless in the home of their own, in 1914, there was a statistics law that established the first statistics. So statistics remains the power behind your planning in terms of disenfranchising blacks, and you need to use it as a power to empower blacks. That is so this historical context is very critical. The second issue is that other than mathematics, I went to study, Mphahlele and I went to study town and regional planning. He's much more cleverer than I. So one of the things that we can say is that the apartheid city space or spatial arrangement is still very prevalent in South Africa. And that we cannot show a city in almost 24 years, 25 years, towards 30 years that we have created on our own. Rustenburg, in the way it's developing, and Beggersford are still taking similar patterns of apartheid because the drivers, the financial drive behind them is laced in apartheid. So that context is very critical. And my last point, because I still have the mic before you stop me, is this issue that you raised with Muhaha and you raised with me earlier on the 32%. We had said that by the year 2020, our unemployment rate would be 14%. I'm afraid in 2020 it was sitting at 28.7, 29%. We are saying that we want it to be 6% by 2030. When we were sitting there in 2011 as a country, we thought 2030 is too far. It's 7 years away. And unemployment is not actually dropping, it's rising. So there is something that we are not doing well to address this issue on the economy. And when you combine it with this issue of the apartheid city space, the spatial arrangements of apartheid, that put the black majority in dry areas, and we cannot, and we are losing a lot of time. There was time that when you had the Madiba magic, Madiba could just say anything and it happens. Today, everything we want to do in South Africa, you will be taken to court. And sometimes on issues of development, especially on the empowerment of the majority, these things take a color line. In the country of our own, in the country of our ancestors, we all have land. I have land in the village. And I'm not talking a plot where I stay. I'm not a plot, a prof. I'm not talking about a little plot I keep in Pretoria. I talk land, masses and masses of land. So we have to make a difference. We have the power and the will, because those who will come after us will not have the will. I thank you.
Mphahlele, this is my last question to you before I go to the audience. The SG says people of Limpopo are not birthday. So we contribute a lot in terms of birth rate, except that they fly out when immediately they can be able to be on their own 2 feet. What is the relationship between this birth rate in terms of numbers and the social grant or social security system that you are witnessing as you walk around in Limpopo as a province, but crucially in an attempt to provide for those that get born, because the majority of them they get born from mothers who themselves are the children.
You know, I raised this question some time ago in a gathering of senior civil servants. And the question that I raised was that, is this social security grant not an incentive for the increase in birth rate? And the answer I got was that there is no correlation. But where I'm sitting here now, 33% of the Limpopo population rely on social security grant, child support grant, to be more specific. Now, a child support grant means it is the child that receives the 33%, the child support grant. So there are two people, the two parents to this child. So the number is more. When you get that 33%, you should multiply it by the number of parents that are there, because all of them depends on the social security grant. Now, for now, because the social sector denies this, I can only pronounce it as a hypothesis that the social security grant, especially the child support grant, is an incentive for the proliferation of births in the province. But another factor is this, that all over the world, the more poor, the more you make children. I don't know why this thing is like that. And the people in Gauteng, the probability is this, that because they are faced with having to take care. They are money-based, so they are very sensitive to childbirth than those that are in the province who can receive a child support grant after having given birth.
Thank you. So I'm going to take 4 questions. We'll take 3 sets of questions, 4 at a round. So let's take the first round. Please do not give a speech. We have already gotten a speech. Please don't make intros. It's okay. Let's just ask the question because considerate of the other people. So I'm going to take 4 questions, 3 rounds, right? Merci.
Okay, thank you. SG, when you're talking about unemployment, you talk about 15 to 24. This is difficult for me. Are 15-year-olds not supposed to be at school? Why do we count them for unemployment? Thank you.
Okay, next person.
Thank you. When looking at the poor nature of, in terms of what the statistics paints for us as South Africa, at what point does statistics give us the measure of the quality and the capacity and the impact of the leadership of South Africa over time, looking at poverty or the social picture as well as the economical outlook of South Africa?
Okay. Someone else? There's a hand this side.
Thank you. Basically, I am a bit concerned regarding the credibility of the numbers that we produce. And I'm glad that I'm speaking to the main man as the head of Stats SA. I want to know when you speak of people who are discouraged from seeking work, on what basis do you say that this person is discouraged from being a job seeker? Because most of the times when we see people coming into our homes or visiting us from Stats SA is when they are making counts as to how many people live in South Africa. But you never really know the main reason why one is unemployed. If I'm to put it to you today that I'm unemployed, how would you determine that I'm a discouraged work seeker or what? Because the numbers that you gave of saying that these are the numbers of people that are discouraged from seeking work and they fall within the higher definition of unemployment being the expanded rate of unemployment, on what basis do you do that? Can't you just take everyone who's unemployed and just make it one definition of the people who are unemployed? Because when you report to the public and say that the people who are unemployed in this country, the main focus is really regarded on that 32.1% or 32.9%. We're not really looking at the broader scope, which is the one that is highly concerning. Because whether you are discouraged or what, the same example that you gave when you were saying that whether I'm technically hungry or what, the fact of the matter is that I'm hungry. So me being discouraged from seeking work, fact of the matter is that I'm discouraged from, I'm basically unemployed. If the government or the public sectors, the private sectors to create jobs, they're supposed to create jobs for everyone who is unemployed. So why do we, one, look at only the smaller rate of unemployment, and on what basis do you determine that one is discouraged from seeking work? Because you don't really make surveys and come to us and ask us why we are really unemployed. Thank you.
I'm looking for students at TGSL. Please do consider coming to join us. Last question for this round.
Well, you have spoken about different statistics based on different sectors. So, while I was looking at your website, I can see that you sometimes give statistics based on different kind of projects. So what I want to know is that, can't you invest the responsibility in you of not only presenting the numbers, but presenting the quality that different kind of interventions have made? For example, we can have an intervention of the government in terms of maybe providing the farmers with different kind of subsidies. On your side, you present that the subsidy have maybe assisted maybe 10 farmers, why don't you look at the quality of the subsidy too, and not only the numbers?
Yeah.
I often get beaten up by Parliament on the issue of 15-year-olds. And it's quite interesting because even the Portfolio Committee on Labor brings the Statistician-General, and they say, why don't you use some countries start at 18, some start at 17. Why do you include children of 15 years? And when they are done asking me questions, and this question was much more easier. You know parliamentarians, when they are grilling you, then when they are done, I say, are you done beating up this Shanga? And they say, yes, we are done. So I say to them, Stats say doesn't make the laws. Let us look first at the issue of using the narrow definition of unemployment. It's there in the National Development Plan. South Africa will track the narrow definition as a way of looking at unemployment. So when it comes to including young people of 15 years, if parliamentarians go and change the law, the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, Section 46(1)(c), if they change it, I will change the age. But that section says it is illegal to hire any child 14 years or younger. So it's a law of the country, which the parliamentarians even beat me up on, which they are the ones who are making that law. Now, it means if you are 15 years and higher and you are not at school, we will include you. So we have what we call the labor force. So if you are looking for employment, you form part of the labor force. If you are a student, you form part of what we call not economically active. Yeah. And we produce that number every month of people who say they are students. So that's how the 15-year-olds qualify. If they are looking for, and there are many, you may not see them here. Go to the Northern Cape, go to the Western Cape on the farms. They are there, they are not at school. Go to KwaZulu-Natal, they are there. They are not at school, they are looking for employment, and the law allows them to look for employment. Now, the quality, capacity of leadership. In the olden days, we had the CSIR, we had the HSRC, and we also had an economic research agency. What they used to do, the CSIR looks at science and industrial development. The HSRC looks at human and all the social related issues. That research body that is no longer there on the economy used to look at the economy. One of the things that we are no longer doing is to, especially at the HSRC, due to funding, is to take policy positions, because you can't assess the capacity of a leader just by looking at how they smile or frown at you. I mean, you would never see, the Statistician-General has no taste buds, so you won't read whether a number looks good or bad by looking at my face. But the quality is based on them being able to implement policies that they agree with the country at levels, times of elections. Now, because the HSRC is no longer able to look at policies, the last time they did very well was the time when we were dealing with the scourge of HIV/AIDS. They used to release reports and reports and reports. They actually tried a bit on this issue of teenage pregnancy that Mokoena was talking about. But I think they were actually backed into a corner to say you can't say that, it's not politically palatable. And here we are talking from a school of business leadership. One thing that we should know about societal excellence is that there is nothing that is not politically correct or not. The politicians will help us package it to political correctness. We need to raise things as they are. So this issue is no longer looked at, the issue of capacity, quality of leadership, and the only time we want to assess them is when there's a strike on service delivery. But that's too late. The horse has already bolted out of the stable. On the issue of the discouraged work seeker, you should not have asked that question seated on that table. Because all those that you are seated with, Kukuza is seated there, is the district manager for Capricorn. Two seats to your left is Khaogelo, the head of our fieldwork surveys here in the province. He's actually the director of fieldwork surveys. And almost all of them are Statistician there. What is happening, and this is the question they ask. When we come and ask you, have you been looking for employment in the last week, in the last week or weeks prior to the interview? Or firstly, are you employed? No. If you say you are employed, we classify you under those that are employed. In which industry we classify you. If you say you are not employed, we ask you, have you been looking for employment in the week prior, up to the week prior to the interview? If you say yes, we include you amongst those that are unemployed. You are part of the labor force. If you say no, we want to know the reasons. If you say no, you could say because I'm a student, so we remove you from the labor force. You are amongst those that are not economically active. If you say I'm too old or too young, we remove you. If you say I'm sick, we remove you. You can't look. Or if you say for whatever reason, and discouragement, we ask you. So if you say, I have looked, I cannot find employment, we want to know. So you are not looking for this. Why are you not looking? And you say, because I'm discouraged. I'm tired. You are a discouraged work seeker according to the International Labour Organization. So that's where we get the discouraged work seekers. That is what the people tell us when we go and interview them. Because we have about 270 products from Statistician per annum. So every day, there's a product coming out of Statistician. And we go and ask. That is why we don't project. We have to measure what has happened. We go and ask and report what has happened. Now, let us look at the issue of unemployment, because he raised this matter. It's quite interesting. Other than discouragement, when we say we have 7.9 million people unemployed, when you are 12 months or more unemployed, we classify you under what we call long-term unemployment. Between 68 and 71%, sometimes up to 75% of our unemployed people are in long-term unemployment. So this is a serious issue. They are more than a year unemployed. And as we talk, about 6.1 million in the country are in long-term unemployment. Because we are in Limpopo, I'm going to talk about your numbers. Don't worry, I know all the 100,000s of the numbers by head and heart. So I talk to them. Because I have worked with them for almost more than a quarter of a century. The number of people that are employed in Limpopo out of the 16.2 million are 1.3 million. The unemployed, we have 7.9 million people unemployed in the country. 600 are in Limpopo, 600,000 are in Limpopo. Now the last question, the quality of the interventions. I will categorize it together with that one that I spoke about, the HSRC, that we can't, but there's also a limitation for us as Statistician. Why are we called independent? One of the things, and I'm glad the MEC is here, and the member of the provincial legislature. When we release numbers, Prof, we don't share them with policymakers first. So when I release numbers, Statistician reports to the presidency under Minister Khumbudzo Nchabeni. Even the president doesn't see them. The president sees them. He goes and watches TV and says, they say that Shangan is about to release the numbers today. Because why are we called independent? It's because assume we were to go and show the president and the MEC, they would say, wait until we have announced the following. So the Speaker of Parliament writes me a letter one day and say, we learned you are releasing GDP on this day, and the President is answering questions in Parliament. Could you move them to another date? So I wrote back, with all the respect, it's not like it's written with on-your-face attitude. I have a lot of respect. I even know how to squat when I talk to elders, Prof. So I wrote it with a lot of respect that we actually cannot change the date because the remit of the date and time of when numbers must be released is the responsibility of the Statistician-General. And political expediency is not a reason for delays. It's only when the quality hasn't been met, when I'm worried about what I'm seeing and I need more time. But not only that, I have to inform the IMF. We are part of what we call this, we are one of the few countries on earth that are part of what you call the special data dissemination standards. And the last point I want to say, by the way, StatsSA is rated very highly in the world. There is nothing statistics that ever discussed the world over, and StatsSA is not consulted. We are amongst the top 5 agencies in the world. A decade, 2005, you will remember, Mphahlele will remember, we were amongst, prior to that, we were amongst the top 40. About a decade ago, we were amongst the top 10. We are now amongst the top 5. Nothing gets discussed, nothing gets agreed, whether it's in China, it's in America, or anywhere, without StatsSA or without the Statistician-General. This Statistician-General, Prof. Mphahlele, your product, being consulted. Thank you.
Yeah, the issue about leadership, and I think one of the most useful things to measure leadership is with the actions they take to steer the ship in the direction that was previously foreseen. Now, I think that is where we fail as a country, because when we see that the results are not what we had envisaged, we sugarcoat it. Now, I was looking at the report of the National Planning Commission, and they were trying to say, why is it that the targets of the National Development Plan are not being met? Right from there, you could see that they find reasons excuses instead of dealing with the reasons, that in actual fact, we did not plan adequately, or we lack the tools, or there is no leadership. But at the center of their argument was that there is need to develop adequate leadership to be able to implement the National Development Plan. We left with 7 years. So I think South Africa requires a much more potent leadership for it to be able to advance the ideals that they had carved for themselves.
All right, here.
Thank you very much, Prof. I read the AG report, and I just quickly went straight to the Limpopo section. The picture is not gloomy there, and it's very bad in terms of how our municipalities are doing. And part of it talks about skills that are found in the municipalities themselves that causes the problems that we have, which is something that you have mentioned, Statistician-General. But my issue now that I want to pose to you and Tlhabura is that what can we do to make sure that we merge the statistics with making sure that we have the political will where they can be able to use those statistics in terms of planning and everything else that has to do with service delivery? Because there's a gap in between the statistics and as well as our political will and in terms of where we want to go for us to be able to achieve the goal of making sure that we have that economic emancipation. Thank you.
Madam, member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC.
No, don't go there. Thank you very much for the good presentation, both from Khaga and Risenga. Mine is, from a policy perspective. Is there a relationship between yourself and the Finance and Fiscal Committee? And how are you actually helping each other? I'm saying this because, like you rightly said, in Gauteng, people go there to look for a job. And when they are old and sick, they come back to our own province. And the FFC, when they do the budget, their budget is allocated in Gauteng, like you said in your statistics. So when they come back here on grants and being sick, the money does not come with them. So it then burdens the provincial budget in terms of looking at other things like your economic growth, your infrastructure. I just wanted to ask that. And coming to Mokgara, I want to differ with you a little bit because I believe, and I think you can also check in this room and also maybe with people who are sitting with you there. We have the technical skills that is needed to grow our economy. And our government is, I can say, developmental state, not fully into it. Policies are there, you're right, good and fine. But who's supposed to implement them? Are they the MECs, the MPLs, the ministers, or the bureaucrats that we have hired, who are qualified to do their work? So every time the top is punished and then the bottom is shielded, and as a result, this keep on coming. So it's not that we don't want to do anything as government. It's not that there are no technical people who can do that. But in terms of, let me just say it, the media will portray a minister as not working, not forgetting that there's an accounting officer with lots of skills and other people who are supposed to do the job and help in that. The last one is that there is the provincial growth and development strategy. I agree with you that we need to change maybe the curriculum, not only at the basic education level, but also at the technical level. Because sometimes we give impression, and I'm also directing this to the institution itself, the TGSL and University of Limpopo. There's this thing, especially among black people, where we think if you are educated is when you have come to a university and having a degree. And we don't recognize why we need technical skills, like your TVET college and technical colleges. And I think for us to be able to achieve what we want to achieve in terms of development, we need to strengthen that part of also dealing with the technical skills and not only the degree part. We need them more than any other things. And never mind the crime issue and other things, but I think what we are saying is bureaucrats must do their work. They are hired and they have the relevant or requisite skills. We expect them to do the work. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. To the SG, I just want you to help us. I often hear them saying numbers don't lie. So with the implementation of the African Continental Free Trade Area that is coming, I just want to find out what are the numbers saying, considering that South Africa is the powerhouse of trade in SADC right now. Most of the countries in SADC are being produced for and supplied goods and services by South Africa. And now there is an implementation of an African Continental Free Trade Area that is coming. How is it going to benefit the country as a whole in terms of a positive impact that it will have on our GDP, considering that even the markets that we have a stronghold on in terms of trade are now open for the whole continent to trade with? Is that going to affect the region? Sorry, is that going to affect South Africa in terms of what we produce as the industries and in terms of the employment or the unemployment that is already there, given the production that we are already making for our neighboring countries?
Okay, so what is going on is that I'm going to give two people the last chance and the MEC to make a comment, and that will have been the last grouping because time has run out of us, and the SG will to respond, and Tlhabirwa then I close. Question?
Yes, thank you. SG, in development studies, we reject GDP growth as an indicator of development. And that is because of what we call the fallacy in the trickle-down effect. So my question is, how long does it take for an ordinary South African to feel the effect or the impact of a positive GDP growth in our country? So with the first quarter reporting of 0.4%, how long will it take for us sitting in this room and people, buying at ShowBright to actually feel that positive growth? Thank you.
If I was still at the Reserve Bank, I will tell you how long the effect of interest rate takes before it bites you.
Thanks so much. I think as an African, I should greet you first. Secondly, introduce myself. The reason why in urban centers we don't know each other is because we don't introduce ourselves to each other. You said, SG, that numbers are used for planning. Number one. Number two.
The first one I didn't hear properly.
The numbers are used for planning. Number two, you spoke about, and it has been to some degree focus of attention, the social grants. And I think you spoke about remittances as well. Money from one area to the other, to our parents and all of that. But the collection centers, which are your shopping complexes and malls, collection of money, is it something you could invest in to engage policymakers to apply their mind to where this money ends? It comes from Gauteng, and then it comes in Limpopo in a specific village. The government invests a lot of millions and billions possibly in the form of social grants. It goes through a shop, and possibly it ends in one racial group. Do they ever really apply the money? And of course it's linked with the money circulation concept. But my question to you, SG, is whether you could invest your time in engaging policymakers insofar as that project is concerned, and what we can do to attempt to circulate money. My name is Matume Chidi. I thought I should introduce myself. Sorry for offending you.
No, Matume, you are welcome to my class. I will teach you about money circulation.
Thank you very much. No. Let me first start to introduce myself.
Okay, no, thanks very much, Prof. Matebula and the Vice Chancellor, the High Commissioner, my colleague, Comrade Polly, Honorable Member of the Provincial Legislature, the Statistician-General of South Africa, Hlavirwa, other academics who are here, business people. I think, firstly, let me start by saying I can't ask a question because you expect me to give some solution, because what we need is sustainable solutions. The challenges that are confronting us, the triple challenges that are confronting us as a country of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. So, to us as government, the issue of statistics, we employ them and extrapolate the data as a diagnostic tool to quantify the backlog in terms of the service delivery and how best we can use in terms of policy propositions that we might have as government, and to address all the social ills and the social amenities that we have to provide as government. The reason why we're having this SEZ is a blueprint to ensure how best in terms of the recovery of the economy and how we compensate and contribute meaningfully to ensure that we transform the socio-economic landscape of our province, but over and about to ensure that we take our province and the country to the highest economic trajectory. The policy implementation is one debate that I think we have to discuss thoroughly, Prof. We have good policies to prevent teenage pregnancies and so forth. And we spend a lot or expend a lot of money invest there. But suddenly they get pregnant and we pay them for that through the another policy, through SASSA, that you have a number of children, you get more. So those are the policy contradictions that we have to address. And when we say that we don't implement policies, we do implement policies, but there are some responsibility and demarcated duties that we have to execute. But what I'm trying to say is that the economic trajectory at this time is facing turbulence or a turbulent environment or the economic downturn globally, and we are a part of that global village as a country. Ours is to ensure that all of us, we put all our hands on a deck to say what are the sustainable solutions that we can employ to turn the situation around and ensure that we fight with the quagmire of the underdevelopment and transform the apartheid economy that we are facing, that because it's still stubborn. Hence, the unemployment is still stubborn. We can't complain as the province, for instance, that we are the home of the 55 platinum group metals. We are endowed with mineral resources, but until we do through these vehicles called special economic zones, the beneficiation, both upstream and downstream beneficiations, the minerals that are discovered in the province are being processed in the province. And that's what I think we're trying to mobilize through these vehicles, and industrialization and revitalization of the industrial parks that we have. And we spend more time on agriculture and tourism, because those are the competitive advantages that we have in terms of Limpopo Development Plan and Limpopo Socio-Economic Recovery Plan. That's my input, Chair. And I think these days definitely assist us to have a paradigm mind shift in terms of how best we can contribute to ensure that where we can compensate and ensure that the poverty index is being transformed and changed for the benefit of our own people and for the sustainable livelihood that we in itself will assist us in terms of the social cohesion that we are expected to address. Thank you.
Okay. Don't leave now. Don't leave. Wait for the responses.
No, thanks, Prof. Facilitator. I just want to make a small input in terms of moving forward with regards to the utilization of this valuable information which we have here, based on the experience which one has wherever you are, on how institutions work together to find solutions to the problem. We do have, for instance, Mauritian Business School, which was established by the Mauritian Chamber of Business, not by government, but government is tapping into the business school from the fact that when government and the business schools are working together, now we are hearing from the member of the parliament that, you know, politicians have set the policies, but the problem is implementation. That implementation program should be now be addressed through the business schools, leadership, and so on, to be able to focus specifically on specific challenges which are long-hanging fruits. Then you will go to the broader problem. For instance, one was saying we've got problems in municipalities because municipalities. Have we ever thought of taking a group of municipal managers as a court, put them through the business school, deal with the issues in municipalities on how to deal with the challenges which they are faced with in municipalities? Unfortunately, DG has moved out. Have we ever thought of taking our CEOs of various institutions, put them through the business leadership school to be able to lead those institutions? And out of that, they will be able to doing action research to say, how do we solve this specific problem in wherever we are? So in that way, you are beginning to solve problems portion by portion. We can't look at all our problems at the same time and think that your statistics will tell us how to solve a problem here and there. But if we take it project by project, for instance, if we want to start with the Sipho industrial, yes, you take a group of your leadership students, give them that project to say, those are the parks which are not utilized. What do we do about them? How do we they make it a project. Once you make it, then government from economic development start funding that. And then the Statistician-General, the local one, will be able to have the baseline statistics and assist as we move on. And out of that, in a year or two, you will be able to look back and say, we had that challenge, we have moved, we are here. Because we can't look at all the problems at the same time. We become discouraged and we begin to learn the language of how to protect ourselves about our failure to implement. And then the business school will start hunting for participants to form calls. Yet we have our government with deficiencies who can be able to put various managers through the school in order to be able to lead. And obviously through the interaction with other business schools and so on, you can exchange your leadership. And in that manner, you are actually empowering the participants.
SG and Tlhabirwa, it's your turn to answer, but Prof. Mokhalong, a ambassador, is talking about a business school in Mauritius. I will be off for 2 weeks to create partnership. I'll be in Mauritius.
I just want to start with this point that Excellency, the ambassador, has raised, and I'll take the other questions. If you look at, there's a program, and both Mokgaga and I have gone to that program at the Harvard Business School. It's called the AMP. Yeah, and ambassador as well. It's called the Advanced Management Program. So they take you through 8 weeks. So after 6 weeks, they bring the spouses or the partners of all those who are attending that program to tell them that the person you are going to receive at home or in your life is no longer the same like the one who left home. So they take them through a week of their own program to prepare them for this human being that they have built in 8 weeks. So firstly, you don't sleep. So you work around the clock. And because you have to do all these case studies that the MBA group is doing in those 8 weeks. You actually lose weight. Mokoena had to regain his weight when he came back. And yeah. Oh, by the way, he was on that as well. Yeah, he never regained his weight. That's why he's still trimmed like that. Yes. But the point is, that program was not started by the Harvard Business School on its own. It was a partnership after when the American economy faced what they called the Great Depression. Government decided we are going to start a program where we will take people who come from the First World War to prepare them for what the future looks like to build a country out of depression. It only stopped during the Second World War. But even then, were people who played a role in deciding or influencing America to enter the war, Second World War, because we remember it entered late, and also deciding on how to quietly steal the power from Britain. We will remember until then, Britain was the most powerful economy and political force in the world. That program is still running to this day. And MEC, other than that, if you go to the Silicon Valley is actually attached to the Berkeley University of the University of California to train their own industrialists. They can go anywhere, they can go to Wharton, they can go anywhere, but you have to have gone through this. So Mphahlele will say to us and other colleagues, Hello here, when we take a decision at Statistician, and I want to follow on this point that why don't we take executives and say, go to the Turfloop School of Leadership, Business Leadership, and develop yourself. In Statistician, it doesn't matter whether you have a PhD or a master's. When we take a decision that you are going to do a master's on a particular program, you don't tell us you are a PhD. We deploy. And you go and spend a year there. So you could have a lot of PhDs and master's people running state institutions here in Limpopo. And MEC could talk to an MEC in Mpumalanga, they are nearer and northwest, and say, regardless of their qualifications, they have to come, and this school has to design a program that suits them. And we make sure it happens. So I will go back to the other questions quickly in terms of the municipalities, what needs to be done. Municipalities are actually, according to our statistics, are running on about 48% of the capacity they should have. And not that the people who are there are appropriately hired. So you could have a CFO who has never done accounting. They are still there. They are there. They are part of the capacity. But there is a law in South Africa called keep left, pass right, although many of those who drive slow these days keep on the right, on the freeway. I'm not allowed to enter certain spaces as Statistician-General, so I cannot say what should be done because I sit with the numbers and I'm independent. If I go to government and captains of industry and I say, you must do this because I have the numbers. And sometimes I see what should be done. That the discipline of not having the temptation to go there has to be there. Sometimes I know if we could do this, we would be better. But why I can't do it is because when you go and measure and things do not confirm what you told them, when they do, they will achieve. As Statistician-General, I'll shy away from releasing those numbers. And once I shy away, I've lost my independence. StatsSA has lost its independence. So StatsSA cannot go into the policy space. However, on the second issue, do we engage the FFC? We do engage with the FFC, but we must understand the way institutions like the FFC are established. The FFC doesn't have a final say. It makes recommendations to National Treasury. Because what we do is that we have the national share formula, which actually looks at horizontal sharing. It talks to use of population and economic activity. So population, we do release, other than population results as censuses, every year we release what we call mid-year estimates, and we do engage them and we do make them available. So horizontal allocation says national, provincial, and local. But what provinces should do when they have challenges, especially of people who are elderly, because they leave Gauteng and they go to rural provinces, they must fight for the vertical allocation, because that vertical allocation, and there's a lot of money sitting in national departments that sometimes ends up being fiscal dumping at the end of the financial year. I will skip who should implement a curriculum for Mokoena and come to Africa, the free trade areas. The one thing is trade, except imports and exports, doesn't sit with us as StatsSA. It sits with the central bank, the Reserve Bank. However, when you look at before we talk about Africa, when you look at our trade statistics, there is already a deficit. Almost a 15%, and it's growing. What we are saying we are importing and exporting with our key trade partners is not what they are recording. So it means there is a problem somewhere. Either there are processes, and I should not use this word corruption, processes that beat us, whether it's corruption or what, which make sure that goods are not properly accounted or recorded for. Why do we have illicit, the transfer of goods in the form of tobacco and alcohol entering the country? So it shows there are weaknesses in the process. That is number one. Number two is that even if you look at the truck going through the border, Limpopo border or Nkomati port, unless you have gamma rays that can scan a truck, you have about 200 trucks coming through per day. For hoping that those people who stand at the border will have to go through one after one. And it's one of the areas that we, as the University of Limpopo, could say that we want to, the first PhD in physics to talk about the late Reggie Khanyago, you will remember him. We're amongst the first people coming from this university that raised some of these issues. We could sponsor that and say, government, we want to work with you on gamma rays for helping you with the challenge of movement of goods at border gates. But there is an issue as well. I chair the IMF body on international comparisons program, particularly on free trade on the continent. I don't think our policymakers are using statistics, not here in South Africa alone, except in developed countries. In developing countries and emerging economies, we don't use statistics, official statistics, sufficiently enough. Sometimes I think we dismiss our statisticians as those people who will release the numbers, who will go and do something else. But if we dismiss them, why do we have unemployment rising when we say we want to measure it and we don't use to? But back to trade. In the international comparisons program, we know, and we are working on the next tranche, even African countries are in it, that will tell us where it is cheaper to produce bread. I can tell you it's cheaper to produce bread if we could transport it in Lesotho, in Zimbabwe, in Ghana, in the DRC. It's cheaper to produce vehicles in Zimbabwe, and we will remember a French car called Peugeot used to be made here. We can make them in Senegal and export them anywhere on the continent. We were given as South Africa the responsibility to manufacture trains. There is a decision of the heads of state, African heads of state and government on that one. In a regular meeting, we still haven't implemented it. So those are some of the things we are facing. Development studies on the issue of GDP, not a good measure of economic development. Let's look historically from the Soviet times. There was a guy called Leontief who came with the input and output tables. They were called Leontief input and output tables. Obviously, Prof, people usually think statisticians are not historians. You have to know your stories to study numbers. Now, what happens in the supply and use table is that what you produce, if you don't export, what you can't produce, you import. If you can't export, if you can't use, you export. I don't think we have enough, and it touches with the free trade area of the continent. We have more goods sometimes produced. That is why you find in mining, Prof, when there's a strike, the miners know that you can go for 3 months. They have stockpiled the minerals, gold and platinum. You can go, they know you will go hungry, you will come back and negotiate. Because they are selling. During strikes, while production is not going, because we measure it, we see production is not going, but sales are ongoing. So it's because of stockpiling. So we don't export as much as we produce. But there's a country, a state of Bhutan, that measures what we call well-being. So they no longer use, they have the GDP, but they also use well-being. They want to measure their happiness of their people in terms of what is sustaining in their daily lives, other than measuring the GDP. But the GDP we need for being able to compete with other nations, and it will be there for quite some time. In terms of, I've already touched on the numbers used for planning, that I can't enter the policy space. It's very difficult for me to enter the policy space. MEC touched on another matter that is very close to my heart. This issue of the girl child that I always tell to policymakers, and the issue of teenage pregnancy. Of all births that are registered with Home Affairs in South Africa, regardless of whether they are for teenagers or for full-grown mothers or women, 64% do not have information about their fathers. 64%. And if a father cannot even make their information available, whether they are married to the woman or not, because that's a social issue you can't resolve. But when a father cannot avail their information to be registered when the child is born, there are so many things that come with that. It already tells you that will be an absent father, number one. Number two, in pension payouts, when the father passes on, the child, because now pensions pick up information from Home Affairs, it means that that child is excluded. So we have to see the mother walking around with their child saying, even this one belongs here at home. And I don't think we should allow, as men, we should allow our women to go through that pain. And as women, I don't think we should allow ourselves to go through that pain. By the way, emancipation is never given, it's taken. So we must go and take that. The last point was the business school I touched on. So I'll leave for Hlabi the rest. Yeah.
Maybe just to deal with this issue, adding on to what you have said, on the issue of the Africa Continental Free Trade Agreement, free trade areas. You know, this is not something that got born today. It started in 1979 in Monrovia, where the heads of state and government decided to create a self-sustaining, independent economy of the African continent. And then in 1980, there was an action plan from Abuja called the Abuja Plan of Action. This was a detailed action plan how to bring about economic independence of the African continent. Then in 1991, you have, no, that was the Lagos action plan. In 1991, there's an Abuja Treaty, which firmed up with the regional, like SADC, ECOWAS, and so on. Now, in 2017, here in Johannesburg, the heads of state and government agreed that at a particular date, there should be a continental Africa free trade areas. Now, this basically is something that is very beneficial for the growth of the African continent. And I'll state one good example. We have, when you look at the SADC industrial strategy, it talks integration, 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 integration. And then you look at Mokoena Special Economic Zone. Some of the inputs into that economic zone will come from neighboring countries or come from an agreement with neighboring countries. Because, for instance, the provision of water, Mokoena Special Economic is surrounded by international rivers. You cannot go and tap water from Limpopo without the approval or agreement with the SADC nations. So that integration is very beneficial in that sense. That at the end of the day, you open up a big market of 300 million people that is going to be able to benefit. We are only 60 million in South Africa, so we are constrained in terms of the way in which we could be able to grow as a country by the number of people that the size of the market is very small. So we need to open up in that particular direction. One other advantage that South Africa has, it's got a very, very strong tertiary sector. Our banking sector is one of the best in the country, in the world, albeit small. But we have a very good, tight financial system that can now begin to oil relationships within us and most of the SADC countries and make trade very, very easy. Same thing is that our manufacturing sector is also very strong in a way, though it is a little bit recessed. If we are able to put our manufacturing sector very well in a good stream such that it could be able to supply most of the SADC countries, we'll be able to see much more benefits. So it is something that is empowering us rather than it being a constraint in many ways. But Limpopo in particular, while it was like a province that was seen as a threat to the stability of South Africa, now the floodgates are open for benefits, for us to be integrating with the likes of Zimbabwe. Now coming to the issue of skills, I was lucky to be one of the people that actually negotiated the 150 billion commitment from the People's Republic of China. One of the things that came out there is that we need 188,000 artisans to go in there, and no university in this country can be able to produce it collectively. So the skill base is very, very low. The likes of the IMF, the World Bank, and every other key stakeholder is bemoaning the fact that South Africa is not producing the right kind of skill for it to be able to move ahead. If you look at the countries that are competitive, India, China, and so on, the output of their engineers in a year is very high, and we are not able to produce the kind of skills that are required for us to have economic progress. For instance, we had to roll out while I was in States SA, in States Council. One of the responsibilities that I had was to lead the strategy of the institutions that is today one of the best in the world. Now, we wanted to introduce something that is called South African National Statistics, South African Strategy for Development of Statistics. And one thing that hit us in the face is that departments would not be able to have statisticians that can deal with the requirements of official statistics as dictated by the fundamental principles of official statistics of the United Nations. So part of the issue is how do we train departments to have statistical units within them that can be able to produce results that are aligned with them. So the skill base in South Africa is very, very weak. It's very weak.
Professor Mokoena will come to do a vote of thanks. I see Hlabirwa avoided and the SG for good reason. A point that May Bushelo has raised, and it's not the first time she raised this issue because she's very passionate about it. But I thought I'm going to make a comment about it before I sit down and Prof is going to come and what go. If you look at South Africa's degeneration, it started when we started to replace competency with son or daughter of the soil. It started with the time when politicians started to think that they must appoint bag carriers instead of competent people to serve them. It started when people started to think that they must appoint pliant people rather than competent people to work for them. Now look at where we are. Because it doesn't mean that the heads of department, the director generals and all that are not necessarily competent. They are probably competent on other things than the roles in which they have been placed. Even those that are competent for the roles that they have been placed in, because what they know is to carry a bag for the MEC, for the minister, all that they know is to arrange which business person must bring which bribe. This is where South Africa is today. So if we want to fix that which the SG avoids to raise, and I can raise, because I'm in an academic space, there's something called academic freedom. So I can hide behind that. It's that we must start a point of the skills they have. Then we can find solutions for Africa. Professor Mokoena.
Prof. Machevula, you know you always exposes my height. But be that as it may, it's not a problem. Good afternoon to you all. And mine is not actually a very big task. Fortunately, I'm not going to be a moderator of the conversation. Is to extend words of appreciation and thank all of you for coming and gracing this event. But I think I'll be doing injustice if I do not actually convey proper, sincere words of appreciation to the following people. I will begin to start with our Vice Chancellor and Principal, Professor Mohalong, and I'm sorry for that. I was trying to be quicker so that I do not actually stand between you and refreshment. So I I say thank you very much, Prof, for always being supportive to the school. A leader of your caliber and stature is always there when something is happening. I know you could have been doing some other important things, but you felt, no, you will not miss the second conversation. Thank you very much. I also want to extend on behalf of the school, the university, the words of appreciation to the Honorable MEC, Monama, and I noted it just walked out now, but be that as it may in absentia, we always receive his support and we appreciate for his presence to grace and his engagement as well during the conversation are much appreciated. And I will also actually want to thank Her Excellence, the High Commissioner of South Africa to Mauritius, Dr. Manzini, for making it to this conversation. You know, when you have a High Commissioner in a conversation, you realize that there's a place where you are belonging. And we say thank you very much for that. And I also want to thank the Limpopo Provincial Member of Legislature, Me Boshielo. I won't say much, but be that as it may, let me thank you. But we'll see if our last night WhatsApp conversation will work today, but it seems not. Prof. Mokhalong, at least I have a privilege to talk to her at any time because of the authority that you've given to me as an employee. I also want to actually thank the media houses, the SABC, and I think it's Capricorn FM, for actually being available for the coverage of this particular conversation. And I should also thank Mr. Homoswan, where are you? You seated right here, with the entire team for making this event a success. So we thank you so much. I think if the school was not working with you, the hall would have not been like how it is right now. I want to thank all personnel of the university from the different portfolios. Again, your presence is much appreciated. Any event without participants or attendees will not be an event. And also thank all the people who participated in engaging the panelists. I think in as much as some of us may not be quant people, but we now noted the significance of, the numbers. So the theme of unpacking, South Africa through numbers, I think was very relevant to even more than the 3 programs that are offered in the school. I now actually want to thank the panelists, a special word of appreciation to Tatana Maluleke. You educated us today. As always, one of my professors will say, please, Prof, can you educate me on this one? Then I know that something is coming. Once he says that, then I know. But I think this could also be evidence through the fact that all the participants are still here, even now, even if we went over a bit through the time. Also, I want to thank our moderator, Ntate Lehohla, for actually the lovely. Sorry. I elevated you by mistake here. I think I was looking forward actually to the former Statistician-General, because the last time I had a conversation with him, he did not actually answer me. So in actual fact, Mphahlele, I'm sorry, but I think unfortunately time is already against you. Perhaps you were going to be one of the SG soon. But be that as it may, we really enjoyed the interaction, and I think some of the students that I've noted here, they are going to be contacting Ntate Mokoena and for perhaps access to certain databases so that they are able to continue with their research. I think one of them, Professor Mphahlele, will be Mr. Njoko, so that he can push faster his PhD. Our very own actually professor in the school, but actually in the university, Professor Matebula. Thank you very much for facilitating this conversation. And indeed, I could take note that the bridge between the community, our stakeholders, and the university is going to be strengthened before the end of the year through this kind of conversations. Again, let me thank even the people who prepared the food, and also just bless the refreshment because will be served soon. As part of announcements, now I'm closing, and I cannot actually, how come I'm making this mistake? It's because you ran away from me, Tate Rachid. I should also actually thank you, or extend words of appreciation and say thank you for making to this conversation. You see, when we have a council member, we always feel that, oh, okay, what we are doing in actual fact is making a lot of sense to the university. So I think really seeing you here, it surprised me a bit. I was not told that you're coming, so but I'm saying thank you very much. I know you're always very supportive of us. Yeah. As part of announcements, you will be able to give them, or you want me to continue? Okay. The university, Prof. Mphahlele, I'm taking advantage that I'm here. I won't say the school, because next time you will not sign. Invites all the guests to refreshments, and will definitely, for sure, everybody is going to get something. So when perhaps now I requested that we perhaps take 3 tables at a go and in this order, don't think that when you are the last table, you're only going to get water and juice. You will get food. So we'll just request that we follow this order. The table where the VC is seated will be the first table, and the second one where Bontate Mokoena is seated will be the second one, and the third one will be where the popular Victor Homuswane is seated. And then after that, then, all the tables could actually follow. But remember, the 3 guests before us are going to join the table where the VC is seated. So they are actually going to accompany the VC as we are dishing out. So that's basically the order. And thank you very much once more. Enjoy the rest of the day.